I spent last week telling you about how Vanderbilt's statistics were fraudulent, doing it against terrible teams. This is not a terrible defense they were facing, and I thought LSU would go up there and handle business. I was wrong. Not going to be the last time. Certainly was not the first, but I was dead wrong. Because when you look at this Vanderbilt football team, and you look at what Clark Lee is trying to get accomplished with this group of players and this roster, they executed their game plan to their strengths to a T, and LSU could not do anything about it. That's what you saw. You saw a team that entered the game leading the country in yards per carry. I said, not so fast, not against these guys. Well, they ran for 239 yards, and there was only one sizable run of 43 yards. It was just consistently 3, 4, 8 yards a pop. Exactly what I told you they were trying to do last week. And they did it whenever they wanted to. They owned third down early in the game. Owned it. They were second in the country entering the game. They absolutely dominated in terms of time of possession. They kept the football away from LSU two-thirds of the game. They had the ball for 36 and a half minutes to LSU's 23 and a half. They won time of possession by 13 minutes. That allowed them to run significantly more plays than LSU, 67 to 49. And they just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And LSU was unable at any point to force Vanderbilt to do anything they were uncomfortable with. Diego Pavia was in complete control. LSU did a horrendous job of trying to keep him corralled in the pocket. Their angles were terrible. Their pursuit was bad. The discipline was not there. And Vanderbilt's discipline was wonderful. They were always in the right spot. They only once had a penalty that really hurt them. Second to last drive, they got a holding call that backed them up, and LSU finally got the first punt of Vanderbilt's day because of it. But it was just everything Vanderbilt was trying to execute, they did. And everything that LSU was trying to do to stop Vanderbilt, they couldn't get accomplished. I was surprised. And I think there is an element to not having Whit Weeks, to not having Gabe Relaford, to not having Jamari Butler, to not having Bernard Gooden. Like that's, there's something to that. Not this bad. This is just getting your butt kicked. That's all this was. Getting your tail whipped by Vanderbilt. Yeah, better Vanderbilt team than years past. Absolutely. No doubt. But not a team that should completely dictate the terms to you for 4 quarters. Completely. And that's what you saw in the game on Saturday. It was disheartening. It was disappointing. And it was thorough. There was nothing fluky about it. I told you after LSU beat Clemson in week 1, I'd go play that game 10 more times and wouldn't feel bad about it at all. I think LSU would control the game. I would not go play that game 10 more times. I think LSU can beat Vanderbilt. I think what Vanderbilt was doing on Saturday is replicable, and I think there's a good chance they would do it again if LSU and Vanderbilt played again next Saturday. That is very disheartening because it was just right out of the Vanderbilt game plan. They outgained LSU 399 to 325, outrushed LSU 239 to 100, and controlled the game from start to finish. I don't have another way to say that. And the thing that was so frustrating and really, to me, was a microcosm of Brian Kelly's time thus far in Baton Rouge was the lack of complementary football and two sides coming together. And that failed to happen in the fourth quarter when finally LSU got the 2 stops it had to have and got the ball back to the offense that had been pretty good throughout most of the game to go get a touchdown, to go tie it or go for 2 and take the lead. And you, in 2 possessions, had negative 10 yards of total offense. In 2 possessions, negative 10 yards. That's what you did. And that is a microcosm of, well, the first year, LSU's offense was pretty good and the defense was okay, but the special teams was a disaster. And then the offense was legendary and the defense was the worst we've ever seen. And then they got the defense up to par and the offensive line play on the other side is awful. They can't get all the holes plugged. That's been a 4-year problem. It boiled down to a fourth quarter problem in this game. Because if you look at LSU offensively, they were functional and fairly efficient through the first 3 quarters of this game. If you look at their drives, they drive down on their first drive and get a field goal. The next drive, 8 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. The next drive, you went down and kicked a field goal. You missed it, and it was long, but you got into field goal range. The next drive, the defense set you up, and you weren't able to do much, but you did get a field goal out of that 11-yard drive. And then you went 92 yards for a touchdown, thanks to some heroics from Xavier Thomas on your next drive. And then you went down and got a field goal on the next drive. So you had created a scoring opportunity on your first 6 drives. That's reasonably decent football. And one of those field goals at the end should have been a touchdown if your 4th-year tight end doesn't commit a pre-snap penalty because you schemed up an easy touchdown. But you got a guy that commits a penalty before the snap, so it costs you points. Costs you 4 points. But to that point, like, you had gotten 6 straight scoring opportunities offensively. Like, that's pretty good. If I'd have told you that entering the game, you'd have thought, okay, well, they got better and they moved the ball against South Carolina. They moved the ball here. Settled for some field goals. Yes. Is that frustrating? Yes. But they were moving it. And then the defense was a no-show. Vanderbilt, 9 plays, 57 yards, touchdown. 14 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. Then you got the turnover on downs. The defense did come up with a big sack there. But then they go down right before the half when they have no time, and they go 50 yards and get a field goal, and then 10 plays, 75 yards, touchdown, 10 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. So while your offense was functioning, that's good. The defense no-shows. Then the defense shows up, and the offense goes into a complete reverse. Negative 10 yards on 2 drives. This has been the problem for LSU for 4 years now. They cannot get everything moving in the right direction. And they didn't on Saturday. And by the time the defense showed up, the offense was out of bullets. And so what you got is a 31-24 loss that really didn't feel that close. It was. You had the ball twice with a chance to go tie it, but it didn't feel that close. And Vanderbilt scored 31 points in this game and slid at the 1-yard line to finish things. Not too big a stretch to suggest that Vanderbilt probably should have scored 38 points in this game. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But this is a disheartening, disappointing loss, and one that you can't explain away by flukes. This is an analogy that I used in the postgame, and I've told you this many times. Like, sometimes my Monday shows sound different than my 28 minutes after the game end show. You have 2 sleeps, and sometimes emotions cool off, and shows are different, whether it's positive or negative. I still feel exactly the same way I did on Saturday afternoon. Like, and I'll use other sports to bring this analogy together. Like, if you're playing a team in basketball is really physical and really tough and a great defensive team, and they throw in 16 threes on you, like, you're not going to win that game. It's frustrating, but, like, you can't have predicted that. If you're playing a baseball team that is a bunch of slap hitters, plays good defense, and they run 3 balls out of the yard on you for 2 3-run homers and a 2-run shot, like, that's not something you could have anticipated, something you could have game planned for, just kind of a fluky thing. But when you get beat like this, when you got on the plane to fly to Nashville, everything Vanderbilt was going to try to accomplish in this game, and they just straight do it to you and dictate that turn, like, that is really difficult to swallow. That is the most frustrating way to lose a football game. You get something fluky like those 2 scenarios and hypotheticals I mentioned, that is disheartening, but it happens. Like, this was just getting your butt kicked, and I don't have another way to say that. The offense showed some signs of life and wilted when you needed it, and the defense just could not figure out how to stop this Vanderbilt offense. And it is pretty stunning because this is the same quarterback and the same coordinator from last year, and you really did a good job against them inside Tiger Stadium. This is the same group that scored 14 points in Tuscaloosa. Yes, the 2 red zone turnovers, but 14 points is 14 points. That's what they scored. And they went up and down the field on you like you weren't even there. That is not something that I figured we'd see when I made my pick on Friday for this game. But hey, I looked really, really foolish, looked really, really dumb, and LSU kind of did too on Saturday in Music City. As Brian Kelly mentioned in his press conference today, like you had half the stadium there. It's not even like you could call that like a road game. Not even a road game. It was more like a bowl game. You had half the stadium. And Vanderbilt just schooled you for 4 quarters in Nashville. Tigers lose 31-24. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.